want to say the Jai Dwani?
Okay, Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Radha Vinod Bihari Radha Govinda Radha Damodar Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Paramahansa Virajacharya Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Abhay Charan Arvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Paramahansa Virajacharya Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Vamana Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Dali Vishnupad Paramahansa Virajacharya Astadhara Sata Shri Srimad Param Gurudev Jagadguru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Maha Bhagavat Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Shata Goswami Sachchid Ananda Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki
Jai.
Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Shri Gauri Vedanta Acharya Srila Dev Bhushan Prabhu Ki
Jai.
Shri Rasika Acharya Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki
Jai.
Shri Narottam Srinivasam Ananda Prabhu Trai Ki
Jai.
Shri Krishna Ras Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki
Jai.
Shri Rupa Shri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki
Jai.
Shri Sri Damodar Raya Ramananda Shri Gaur Parashad Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Prem Sigaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki
Jai.
Shri Navadvip Maya Purdam Ki
Jai.
Om Devi Ki
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai.
Bhakti Devi Ki
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai.
Alashtami Ki Shri
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki
Jai.
Shri Devi Ki
Jai.
Shrimati Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki
Jai.
Tulsi Maharani Devi Ki Gopishwara Mahadev Ki
Jai.
Braj Dham Ki
Jai.
Kartik Ma Surya Javrat Niyamaseva Radha Damodar Ki
Jai.
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Surasan Chakra Chaitradanta Gopinath Ki
Jai.
Narasingha Bhagavan Ki
Jai.
Lakshmavara Prahlad Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki
Jai.
Samagata Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande
Hari 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 Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Vadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Tvishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prema Ananda Pradayane Kalo Kalamashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Ajanulambita Pujo Kanakavadato Samkirtanaika pitaro kamalaya taksho Vishwambaro dvijavaro jugadharma balo Bande jagat priyakaro karunavataro. He Krishna karuna sindho dinabandho jagatpate Gopesha gopika kanta Radha kanta namostute Tapta kanchana gaurangi Radhe vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu sute devi Pranamami hari priye Brindai tulsi debai priyai keshavasya cha Krishna bhakti prade devi satyavachai namo namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali, at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astatarasata, Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. And then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nityalila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Astatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak, Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. My Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. Tomorrow on our Vaishnava calendar is the transcendental appearance day of my worshipable Siksha Gurudev Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. So I thought tonight we would warm up and hear some nectar from him.
Very good.
Yes. So, I could open up anywhere in any book, doesn't matter, any paragraph, and it would be an entire lecture. So, but since I was reading when I was down in Los Angeles recently, I was just reading one little excerpt from the book called Search for Sri Krishna Reality the Beautiful, compiled from his darshans in the early 1980s. So, there's a section here, and it leads up to a question that a devotee asks. And that question is, I'll just go straight into this. So, a student, they just say student, some devotee is asking this question. Many people are worried about nuclear war because back in the 1970s, the Cold War and everybody was worried, right? And still they are. That and other things. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj is going to give an answer that is coming from the absolute platform. So the question is, many people are worried about nuclear war. They think it may come very soon. Srila Maharaj, here's his answer. That is a point on a line on a plane in a solid. What is he talking about here?
Dimensions.
He's talking about geometry, right? Right? So, when you want to understand something spatial, then he's explaining regarding that topic. He says that is a point on a line, and a line on a plane, and a plane in a solid. So many times, wars are coming and going. So many times, the sun, the earth, and the solar systems disappear. So many times. The sun, the earth, and the whole solar systems, they disappear. And then again, spring up. We are in the midst of such thought in eternity. We are in the midst of such thought in eternity. This nuclear war is a tiny point. What of that? Individuals are dying at every moment. The earth will die. The whole human section will disappear. Let it be. We must try to live in eternity, not any particular span of time or space. We must prepare ourselves for our eternal benefit, not for any temporary remedy. The sun, the moon, and all the planets appear and vanish. They die, and then again they are created. Within such an eternity, we have to live. Religion covers that aspect of our existence. That aspect is covered by religion. We are told to view things from this standpoint, not only this body, but the human race, the animals, the trees, the entire earth, and even the sun will all vanish and again spring up. Creation, dissolution, creation, dissolution. It will continue forever in the domain of misconception. At the same time, there is another world, which is eternal. We are requested to enter there, to make our home in that plane, which neither enters into the jaws of death, nor suffers any change. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 16, it is stated, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar arvartano arjuna mamupetya tu kaunteya punar janma na vidyate. Krishna is saying, even Lord Brahma, the Creator himself, he has to die. A Brahma Bhuvana Loka. That means from Brahma's planet all the way down to all the other lokas. So up to Brahma Loka, the highest planet in the material world, the whole material energy undergoes such changes. But if we can cross the area of misunderstanding and enter the area of proper understanding, then there is no creation or dissolution. That is eternal. And we are children of that soil. Our bodies and minds, they are children of this soil, which comes and goes, which is created and then dies. We have to get out of this world of death. We are in such an area. What is to be done? What is to be done? Try to get out. Try your best to get out of this mortal world, this mortal area. The saints inform us, come home, dear friend. Let us go home. Why are you suffering so much trouble unnecessarily in a foreign land? The spiritual world is real. This material world is unreal, springing and vanishing, coming and going. It is a farce. From the world of farce, we must come to reality. Here in this material world, there will be not only one war, but wars after wars, wars after wars. There is a zone of nectar. There is a zone of nectar. And we are actually children of that nectar that does not die. He's quoting, Shrinvantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. Somehow we are misguided here. But really, we are children of that soil which is eternal, where there is no birth or death. With a wide and broad heart, we have to approach there. With a wide and broad heart, we have to approach there. This is declared by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the Srimad Bhagavatam all confirm the same thing. That is our very sweet, sweet home. And we must try our best to go back to God, back to home, and take others with us. Yes, that's the end of that chapter.
This is, so amazing, of course. Thank you for reading it. But it relates a little bit to the verse in Damodarashtam we were discussing this morning, Varam Deva Moksham, and how he's rejecting all these different types of liberation. And then the discussion came up what proof is there really that a Badha Jiva can actually become, not just become liberated, but actually attain to Krishna's eternal abode. And part of that discussion is we just have faith in the words of our acharyas and our scriptures and all of these things. But then other people were asking
Someone was asking the question, where's the proof?
Where's the example of okay, we can't say that any acharya in our line was not a nitya siddha bhakta, was not, was a Badha Jiva. So it was just interesting because this question was coming, how do we even know that this is possible? It seems so unattainable. And then one answer is just that we have faith in our Guru and our Guru Varga and all of the Shastras and everything. But I guess I'm just curious how you would answer that question. or how, from Srila Maharaj, just this, what he's spoken here, how we answer this question.
Yes, it's called Dasmul Tattva. That's the answer.
That's a good answer.
The 10 essential philosophical principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, which is the essence of all knowledge. Essence of all knowledge. And, as we know, all of these principles, all of these philosophical principles, we should contemplate, who are these personalities who have written these books? The disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That means the 6 Goswamis and other great personalities. They were the greatest philosophers and scholars that ever lived on our planet. This is not an exaggeration. We're not just saying. No. Everyone concedes that Jiva Goswami, for example, no one, no logician, no one can defeat him. What about Mahaprabhu himself? As a young teenage boy, he defeated the greatest scholar in all of India. This is not a play. This is not some, non-serious game. No, this is reality. Now, first of all, when we examine the Bhagavad Gita, who examined this Bhagavad Gita? All of our great acharyas. They've written commentaries on it. Like Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya and all of these 4 great Vaishnavacharyas from South India, prior to Mahaprabhu, they were completely the most empowered beings. This is not fiction. I've gone right there to see where Madhvacharya established his deity. There are many, many books. We are not imagining anything. Now, in other religions, they have some kind of evidence about their beliefs. They have certain types of scriptures, for example, the Bible, which, as you know, I studied in my childhood. So, that's just one single book that is also manipulated over hundreds and thousands of years. There's no disciplic succession. But yet there's truth there. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur, even Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and so many great personalities have examined. Some truth is there, but it's very, very, very elementary. Very beginning stages, barely. And even, for example, Buddhism. Buddhism is simply based upon Vedic knowledge that describes the transmigration of the soul. But Buddhism is not even in the category of what is called Dharma. It's called Upadharma, sub-religion. If we examine any of the modern day religions that have sprung up or from the last couple thousand years, we will see that it's very, very elementary information. Yet, people have devoted and dedicated their life and soul because there is some truth there. There is some truth. But it is not spelled out very clearly. So, we, devotees, we have come into the contact of the Vedic scriptures presented in this time period, in the English language, by the greatest scholars and acharyas, okay? The more that we study that, the more that we see how towering great personalities they were. On a universal, throughout the entire world, no one can stand in their presence. So it's not something cheap that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended to give. Those who have good intelligence, right? Those who have good brain substance. It describes this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. You know that verse? Jagyai samkirtana praya yajantihi sumedashaha. Right? You remember the beginning?
Those with sufficient brain substance will take to the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah.
His names will be chanted throughout the world.
Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam. Here, 5,000 years ago, Srimad Bhagavatam is relating the story of the Navi-Yogendras, who were the sons of Rishabdev, Lord Rishabdev, and they're each answering his question one by one, his questions. And Karabhajana Rishi, one of those rishis, is telling, who is the incarnation in the Kali Yuga? And he mentions this verse, Krishna Varnam, Tvisa Krishnam, Sangopangastra Parshadam, Jagyai Samkirtana Prayayar Yajantihi Sumedhasha. What is the meaning of Sumedhasha?
Very intelligent.
Yes, Su means very, very good. Medhasha, sometimes it's translated, Prabhupada would translate it as brain substance. Okay? Sumedhasha, because sometimes Prabhupada would say he has cow dung for brains. You see? Sumedhasha. Bhagavatam is saying, those who are intelligent, they will worship this Supreme Lord who has descended, who is constantly chanting the name of Krishna, Krishna Varnam, Tvisha Krishna, who is of not blackish color, golden color, Sa Anga Upanga Astra Parshadam. And he's not alone. He is with his associates, his expansions, the expansions of his expansions. Parshadam, all of his eternal associates. And how will they worship this Lord? Jagyai Samkirtana Prayayar. They will worship him through the process of Samkirtan Yajna. Yajantihi. They certainly will yajanti. They will perform this yajna, this sacrifice, sumedhasha, because they have very good intelligence. So, Dasmul Tattva should be studied by all the devotees. There is no question whatsoever of the authoritative authenticity of this knowledge. And it's been existing before any other knowledge on this planet for millions and billions and yugas. Okay? So, if a person is intelligent, then they can discriminate and they can understand, okay, this is not something, made up, manufactured in somebody's fertile brain. Yes, there are such religions, like Scientology or something like that. But even that rascal, he has to take from the Vedas for his theories. Even Darwin had to take from the Vedas for his theories. There has been a very, very great conspiracy from the British time to destroy Vedic culture, Vedic knowledge, and to not allow the people of the world to understand how superior this is, how great this is. A very, very great, very complicated conspiracy throughout all the universities in the world. Yeah. I was talking to Gaur Sundar Prabhu about this, even some time ago. He went through the university after he grew up in the temple and all of that. He knows what is there. You've gone. So many have gone. I was just hearing on the tape today when I was taking Vishal Prabhupada. Where is there any university, in any university in the entire world, that will teach you how to become immortal?
That's what probably Gurudev told me.
Who?
Gurudev told me,
Yeah.
you'll learn more helping in the Badger School than any university in the world.
Yes. Because it's real, that's the thing. Everything else is ephemeral, like we just heard Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj telling. Everything is a farce. This material world is a farce. We want to go to the real world. That's the only knowledge that has any value whatsoever. Because when someone comes on the path of that knowledge, then they can execute the process through which they can attain that. You see? So this is the movement that is going to bring this to every town and village. It's already gone on in a very powerful way in the very beginning stages, half a century ago, but it's got a ways to go. And the Lord Chaitanya just happens to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inside of every tiny little atomic particle. So everything is moving by his will, and he's arranging everything. This is a cleansing time. So many things will be cleansed, because without cleaning, you cannot put something of value there. People will not be able to appreciate it, and we've seen that. So, the first principle of Dasmul Tattva is Praman. Okay? You can't go anywhere without Praman, without evidence. You see? That was one thing I noticed after how many years? 9 years of growing up and hearing biblical teachings every single day in school, from kindergarten until 8th grade. 9 years. But when I began to contact the Bhagavad Gita, this is different. This is actual knowledge. Every question is answered very perfectly. Everything is logical. Nothing is left to guess about. Nothing. So the thing is that Shraddha, faith, is not a material thing. We have to understand this. In the material world, and that's why there's an entire chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, right, called Divisions of Faith, right? And it's talking about Shraddha. But in the material world, people have Shraddha in everything. There's always some system of Shraddha in the material world. Whatever people believe in, whatever they're pursuing in the political arena, in the social arena, everywhere. Everything is based upon their belief systems. But Shraddha, there's different types of Shraddha, right? And the type of Shraddha which enables the jiva to come onto the path of Sanatana Dharma is called Param Artik Shraddha. Param Artha means what?
Goal.
Yes, supreme attainment, Artha. Like Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha. Supreme necessity. So the jiva is equipped to be able to attain and transcend throughout the universes, to leave the universes. The jiva is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna. That's what we're going to hear from Srila Sridhar Maharaj next. He's describing the jiva. And the jiva is capable and equipped in the human body, in the human form, with the benefit and the help of previous life samskaras and previous lives sukritis, to come to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and be prepared to hear. Not everyone can do. In the Bhagavad Gita, does Krishna not say, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschim mam veti tattvataha. Here Krishna is dividing the human beings into this special category. Those who are interested in perfection. So he says, Manushyanam sahasreshu. Out of thousands of human beings. Kaschid yatati siddhaye. Kaschid means someone. There may be one. Out of thousands. Right? Who are interested in attaining siddhi. Perfecting their lives. Attaining the supreme perfection of the human form of life. And then he further divides that amongst those, Yatatam apisiddhanam, of those who have attained some perfection level. Kaschin mam veti tattvataha, very rare to find someone who knows me perfectly in truth, who is realized. So, the process of self-realization is the most important thing. Self-realization means to realize the absolute truth. And that's why in the Vedanta Sutra, the very first verse, you know what Vedanta Sutra is? The compilation of Vyasadeva after he's written all the Vedas. And now he's summarizing all of the most important philosophical conceptions given in all the Upanishads and everywhere in 550 sutras. And the first sutra is saying, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Janmad Yasya Yataha. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now human form you've attained. Now inquire about Brahma. What is the absolute truth? And if you want to inquire about Brahma, there is no other place that you're going to find the information and answer other than the Vedic knowledge. There's no other place that you will be able to attain this supreme knowledge of the absolute truth, from whom and from which everything has come. And, you know, Prabhupada encouraged scientists, because he had his Bhaktivedanta Institute and various PhD scientists came to him, and he encouraged that, yes, they should examine what is this world, because it's inevitable that they'll come to the conclusion that there's God. It cannot be any other way. Einstein was a very great theist, okay? He was a theist. He firmly made many statements. There's absolutely no way. He said, when they continue to do their research and examination, they must come to this conclusion. And Gaur and I, we were talking about this. There's one kind of like a follower of the Maharishi. He's a scientist. I forget his name, but we watched one video of him. And he's a very high-level scientist, very well known. And he's proving in that video how there is God. So this is what Srila Prabhupada wanted. This atheistic, Darwinian theory, evolutionary theory, nonsense, Big Bang theory has been usurping in this period of Kali Yuga, has been trying to promote, because they're demons and atheists. They don't believe in the Supreme. So that is what is going to be destroyed, because they're standing in the way. And that's why Srila Prabhupada waged war against them, against modern scientists, and how on his morning walks, he would have his scientists say, okay, what did the scientists say? And then he would smash it, cut it to pieces, dissect it, completely disprove it. So the real scientists are those who sat in front of Sri Shukadev Goswami when he spoke Srimad Bhagavatam. 60,000 universal sages. This is not some fairy tale story. No. You don't get 18,000 perfectly composed verses of such category and high subject matter from a fairy tale, okay? From some Greek mythology book or whatever, mundane poet. This is all reality. And when we meet the persons who have realized this, the person Bhagavad, then we know it's reality. That's the real thing. So, Srila Prabhupada, he used to say, you should become convinced completely. He said, if I had, he mentioned, remember this one quote, he said something like, if I had 5 disciples or whatever, who were completely convinced, we could take over the world in 18 days.
18 days.
Because the battle of Kurukshetra was fought by the Pandavas in 18 days, you see. So this is the movement to do that. We have to become convinced. If we're not serious about performing our sadhana bhajan, about following the process very strictly, very purely, we will not be able to become convinced. Because there's another energy, there's another force called Maya. And that Maya is very dangerous, actually. That Maya can pull the jiva away and will do that because that's her job. She's a servant of Krishna. No one can stay on this path unless they're serious and sincere. And if they have cheating mentality, then they will not be able to come on this path and they'll fall down into mundane consciousness and everything will be mixed. But perfection is not achieved that way, ever, by anyone. Strict following is necessary. Come on, even to just get a university degree, strict. Do you have to have discipline to get a university degree? Do you have to work like really, really hard? Do you have to give up a lot of things, a lot of time and everything? Sure as hell do. And that's for years on end. So why should we think that this process is so cheap that all I have to do is just a little Hare Krishna once in a while? No. But nevertheless, anyway, everyone is on a different level. We're not condemning if a person has not yet come to that point. But what we're interested in is to cultivate this knowledge perfectly, sincerely. We don't want to waste our human form of life. And none of us know how long we have, especially nowadays, you know. So we don't know. Nobody ever knows. The human form of life is not to be wasted. But we should try our level best to become convinced. And really, it's very easy to become convinced if we just follow the process. And we're hearing and chanting every single day. Not just the Mahamantra and our japa, but actually seriously hearing the Shastras, hearing the words of the pure devotees. This is so powerful. It's not some big complicated process. It's just this. That's called Bhakti Yoga. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. This is our life. 9 processes. Prahlad Maharaj told this. And he said, Iti Pumsarpita Vishnu, Bhaktis Chain Navalakshana. Any person, any human being that follows these 9 processes, Bhaktis Chain Navalakshana. Kriyeta Bhagavat Yadha Tanmanye Aditam Uttamam. That person who does this, in my view, Manye, Tadmanye, in my opinion, Aditam Uttamam. He is the topmost in human society. So, this is what we have to practice. And we've been given so much nectar. Even if we sat here in the temple room 8 hours a day, you know, for the rest of our being in this body, we'd not be able to cover all of it. But to speak of just the Srimad Bhagavatam alone, to properly study it and hear all of it. So we don't have time to waste. And Kartik time is not the time only for offering a few lamps and saying a few ashtakams. This is the time for intensifying our sadhana and deepening our understanding and tasting and relishing. Tasting and relishing. And did Gurudev say only to do this during Kartik? No. Every single Kartik, we would be with him there in India, and at the end of Kartik, he would say, so actually, this is a warm-up. Now you have to continue for the whole rest of the year till next Kartik. You see? And what do they want? Our acharyas, they want us to become happy. That's all. They want us to stop being here in the material world, which is just full of suffering, and always being so deeply moved and affected by all these temporary conditions. That's why Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. You should rise above this. Matra sparshas tukanteya sitoshna sukha dukkada. You should understand all this sukha dukkha in the material world. It's all coming and passing, just like the summer and winter seasons. Simply arising from sense perception. So you have to learn to tolerate without being disturbed. I was listening today, Prabhupada was speaking on that topic. So, but why did they come? Why did our acharyas come? Why did Srila Prabhupada have this theme as he introduced Krishna consciousness? Coming out of nowhere practically, just sudden, boom, all of a sudden he's there, a pure devotee in the middle of the Lower East Side of New York, and going into a park and chanting, or giving little classes in this place and that place. He came with the greatest gift. He came with the greatest message on the Jaladuta, the water messenger. He came to give the matchless gifts in 26 Second Avenue, and he expanded it through the Srimad Bhagavatam and traveled the entire world and gave it. Why? Because compassion, mercy. This is the panacea for the sufferings of all living entities. This is the panacea. So, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I'll read a little bit more. I mean, I don't see anything else happening. So, this is the next chapter, third chapter. It's called Fossilism versus Subjective Evolution. That's a big topic, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He has an entire book called Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, but this is like a little excerpt. And it was with a PhD disciple named Dr. Daniel Murphy. You know who that is? I'm pretty sure that this is who later became Rishikesh Maharaj. Dayadhar. He was a brain surgeon. Anyway, oh yeah, neurophysiologist. So, the following chapter is an excerpt from a conversation between Srila Sridhar Maharaj and neurophysiologist Dr. Daniel Murphy, PhD. Darwin has given the theory of evolution. Srila Sridhar Maharaj is talking. Darwin has given the theory of evolution, fossilism. Vedanta has given subjective evolution. In Darwin's theory of objective evolution, matter evolves consciousness. The object exists first, and by its development, life is coming, consciousness is coming from stone. That is the objective evolution. But an object is a relative term. Object is a relative term. Without a subject, an object cannot stand. The subject is the primary substance. Whatever is to be felt is only an idea in the subjective ocean. So, the subject, consciousness, is first. The object, the gross, proceeds from the subtle. Again, so the subject, consciousness, is first. The object, the gross, it proceeds from the subtle. When a particular potency is handled by Krishna in his form as Mahavishnu, then the material energy begins to move and produce something. Then he's quoting Gita, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. So when a particular potency is handled by Krishna in his form as Mahavishnu, then the material energy begins to move and produce something. The first product is a general ego. That's the first thing. General ego. That means ahankar. So then gradually, so many plural individual egos emanate from the general ego. That's us. The experience of this world develops from ego. When ego contacts the mode of ignorance, form is produced. When it contacts the mode of goodness, the sun and light are produced. When false ego comes in connection with these three modes of nature, a bifurcation takes place, generating the objects of the senses, the material senses, and the power of sense perception. So, from the subtle, the gross is coming. Next section is titled The Ghost of Darwin. That is Vedantic evolution. But the Darwin theory says that from the gross, the subtle is coming. At present, people are fond of the Darwin theory that stone produces consciousness. Darwin's objective evolution has swallowed us. Although externally we reject it, we hate it, still the ghost of Darwin's theory has devoured everyone. Therefore, it is difficult to make them understand that consciousness is more valuable than stone. It's easy for consciousness to produce stone. It is difficult for stone to produce consciousness. Consciousness is more valuable. Stone is less valuable. So a more valuable thing can produce a less valuable thing. But it is difficult to explain how a less valuable thing can produce something more valuable. This is like similar to how Prabhupada talked about life comes from life. Huh? Have we ever seen that matter is producing life? No. So now the next section is called Fossil Fathers. They've given certain catchy kind of titles when they produce this book. The material scientists think that the subtle proceeds from the gross. This is upside down. It is just the opposite. Not fossil fatherism, but Godfatherism. Their theory is fossil fatherism. The fossil is the father of everyone. The scientists believe that everything moves upward. This is incorrect. It is coming down. That is described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, verse 1. Urdhva moolam adah shakam ashvatam prahur avyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam veda savedavit. So this is the chapter where what is being described in this chapter?
Is that nature, joy and consciousness?
No, that's 13th chapter. This is the chapter that is describing the tree of this material world. Urdhva moolam adah shaka. So here, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is explaining this first verse. You have to do something?
I don't know what's the program, right? Because
Okay, so let's decide what we should do.
we should chant the Maharashtra or just
I mean, that's the program that they're going to chant, but nobody's come.
That's done before Arti?
Yeah, it's done before Arti.
before Arctic, like 5
Okay,
minutes.
so we'll finish in 5 minutes then. And then we can start the Astakams and all that, and then after that we can do the Arti. What about the offering? What is the program for? Is there a bog offering made to the Thakurji?
Yeah, but after everything and but
After the Artik,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
made. Okay.
But now, don't know. Maybe I will just offer milk, but after
Oh, so there was no schedule who's going to cook something tonight.
they don't know.
They make some agreement.
I thought Govinda will come. But
Yeah, they make some agreement amongst themselves usually.
Mm.
Okay, anyway, 5 more minutes and then we'll do that. So, the tree of this material world has its roots upward. while its branches extend downward. Upside down tree. The leaves of this tree are the Vedic hymns. Krishna's telling. The leaves of this tree of the material world are the Vedic hymns. One who understands this tree and its origin is a true knower of the Vedas. So, according to Vedic knowledge, everything moves from up to down, not from down to up. Matter does not produce the soul. Rather, the soul contains in its one negligible portion the conception of matter. Like an eczema, it is a disease. You know, eczema, skin disease? Like eczema, it is a disease. The world exists like an eczema in a wholesome body. This is the Vedantic understanding. It would certainly be a wonderful miracle if stone could produce the soul, but it is easier and more reasonable for us to think that the soul has produced the conception of stone. If in the soul there are many conceptions, and one conception is that of stone. It is all in the plane of consciousness. It is all in the plane of consciousness. But that stone can produce soul or consciousness. That is difficult. But that stone can produce soul or consciousness is difficult, is ridiculous, inconceivable, and unreasonable. Rather, it is the opposite. Something like the Berkeley theory that the world is in the mind, and not that the mind is in the world. It is only our deviation from the truth that brings us into this mundane world. How and where that deviation begins is to be thought out. But deviation from the truth has brought us to this false area. So, consciousness is producing everything. Consciousness is eternal. This world is not eternal. We're going to stop in a couple minutes, and then we're going to start the everything. Consciousness is producing everything. Consciousness is eternal. This world is not eternal. This is a temporary production, and the temporary stone cannot produce eternal consciousness. Pure consciousness is an eternal subject, nitya, sanatana. It is not a product, it is productive. Either can produce ether. Ether can produce fire and earth. But the earth cannot produce ether. In other words, from subtle to gross. The subtle is more efficient than the gross. The gross is of secondary importance. The soul, the Atma, is of principal importance. The origin of everything must be conscious. The starting point must begin with the interested party. The soul is endowed with interest. But a stone has no interest, no plan or project, nothing of the kind. But there is a plan and a purpose pervading everything, and that is the important thing. According to that consideration, the characteristic of the absolute, the original substance, it should be calculated according to that important thing. According to that consideration, the characteristic of the absolute, the original substance, should be calculated. An object of limited attributes and capacity cannot be the ultimate cause. Only a thing of unlimited quality and capacity should be taken as the cause of the whole. That is a more reasonable idea. Science should realize this. So there are some who think that science is gradually trying to meet with philosophy. Yeah, like we were saying. The material science is only increasing the circumference of the material world. But increasing the tendency of exploitation cannot help us. Science is only borrowing, extorting power from nature. According to Newton, quote, according to Newton, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So we must be conscious of this fact. All our acquisition here is nothing. It is like a boomerang. It will come back to zero again. So scientific progress is no progress. It is progress in the wrong direction. Actually, the first principle of any living body is to save himself. That is the first principle, and that should be our starting point. In the Upanishads it is said, Asatoma sadgamayo, tamasoma jyoti gamayo, mrityorma amrita gamayo. This means, I am mortal, make me eternal. I am ignorant, filled with nescience, take me to science, to knowledge. And I am threatened with misery, guide me towards bliss. We should begin our research work in these three phases. How to save one's own self and save the world. How to remove darkness and attain light. And how to remove misery and taste nectar, the sweet life of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Satchidanandam, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. So, we'll stop there. And now I guess we start just to sing the Ashtakams, right? Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Shri Kartik Vrata ki Jai. Jai Shri Damodar Vrata ki Jai. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande. Can you hand me a songbook also?
Sure.
Thank you.
What ashtakam do you do?
Not the Mami Nandana. What page?
This morning.
Okay.
We're doing it in the morning.
Doing what?
Rinda Devi has to come.
Oh yeah.
We,
Yes. You're doing extra kirtan in the morning,
Yeah.
but in the evening just these three.
We were doing more before, but now there's a little less time, so we're just doing these three now.
Yeah, okay.
It's page 289, and then
Okay.
285, and then 290.
Okay.
Mangalam
Sukarnaratna Kundala Sucharchitanga Chandanam Namami Nandanandanam Sudirganetra Pankajam Shri Shikanda Murdajam Anangakoti Mohanam Namami Nandanandanam Nasikada Moktikam Sachandadanta Pantikam Navam Budanga Chikanam Namami Nandanandanam Karena Venuranjitam Gati Karinga Kanjitam Nukulati Shovanam Namami Nandanandanam Mangadeha Sundaram Nakajuti Sudakaram Amula Ratna Bhushanam Namami Nandanandanam Sugandha Anga Saurabha Puro Virajito Shubha Surat Srivatsalanchana Namami Nandanandanam Vrindavana Sunagaram Vilasanugavasasam Surendra Dharma Mochana Tadanmana Pralobanam Namami Nandanandanam Shri Nandanandanashtakam Pateya Shobhayamrita Tare Bhavakindushtaram Nadeshtaram Viyurmakam Namami Nandanandanam Namami Nandanandanam Namami Nandanandanam Namami Nandanandanam Mudindra Vrindavandite Triloka Shokaharini Prasanna Bhatta Pankaje Nikunja Bhuvilasini Brajendra Bharanandini Brajendra Sunu Sangrate Tadakarisha Sriyamam Kripakadaksha Bhajanam Ashoka Vriksha Varani Nikana Manda Bastite Pravala Vala Palava Pravarunandiko Mare Baya Baya Surakare Prabhuta Sampadaraye Tadakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Ayangaranga Mangala Prasanga Bangula Bruma Sadivramam Sasambramam Nidanta Vanapatane Nirantaram Vasipita Patiti Nandanandane Karakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Kadishuvana Champaka Kadita Gaura Virahe Mukha Prabha Parashtato Nisara Kendu Mandale Vichitra Chitra Sankara Chakora Shavalochane Kadakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Madhonmadati Yovane Pramodamana Mandite Priyanuragaranjite Kalavilasa Pandite Ananya Danya Kunjaraja Kamate Likodire Kalakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Ashesha Hava Bhava Hira Hira Hara Bhushite Prabhuta Shata Kumbha Kumbha Kumbhi Kumbha Sushtami Rasashta Mandra Asya Churna Purna Sota Sagare Kadakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Bala Bala Taranga Ranga Dolate Radhakalasha Lola Nila Lochana Malokane Lala Lulan Nilan Mano Yamuda Mohanashite Radhakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Suvarna Mauli Kanchita Trileka Kambu Kantare Isutra Mandali Duna Kiratna Diti Diti Savola Nira Kuntala Asuna Gucha Kumbhire Tarakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Nikamba Kimba Lambavana Pushpame Kalagune Prashasta Ragna Kinkini Kalapamaya Mandure Karindra Shundra Dandika Varoha Soha Koruke Karakarisha Sriyamam Kripakataksha Bhajanam Adriya Puromaja Virinchija Varakare Apara Shivira Sapadam Gulinake Maheshwari, Priyeshwari, Sarveshwari, Sureshwari, Viveka Bharatishwari, Pramana Shashaneshwari, Rameshwari, Shameshwari, Pramodakananeshwari, Garbheshwari, Vrajadite, Shirayike Namostute. Madhurtam Swavam Nishamyavanunandini Karotu Santatam Jana Vipakatakshavajana Bhavetadaiva Sanchita Virupakarmanashana Bhavetadava Jendrasunu Mandala Praveshana Are there lamps there for offering?
There are lamps.
They're already there.
There should be some.
There needs to be light.
No
We
light.
need the lighter.
Yeah, there are.
Namami
Shradam Sachidandarupam Lasratundaram Gokule Radhamanam Yashoda Vinoduka Radhamanam Bhagavan Jai Shri Damodarashtakam ki Jai. Jai Prabhupada ki Jai. Hari Hari Jai Sakarikar Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Vihari Radha Govinda Ji Ki Jai Tadiv Shubha Sandhya Rarati Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tathara Sata Shri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tathara Sata Shri Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tathara Sata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tathara Sata Shri Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Astatara Sata Shri Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Mahabhagavat Srila Gaura Kishore Das Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Shri Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gaudiya Vedanta Charya Baladev Vidibhushan Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Ki Jai Srila Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Trai Ki Jai Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Sri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sada Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Sarup Damodar Roy Ramanandari Gaur Parsada Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sigaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Dhama Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Govardhan Dvarshavanatmaka Shri Braj Mandala Dhama Ki Jai Shri Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Radha Gopinath Radha Madan Mohan Jiu Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Radha Shyama Sundar Radha Raman Radha Damodar Jiu Ki Jai Srimati Lalita Vishaka Adi Ashta Sakhi Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Rupa Manjari Rati Manjari Adi Manjari Vrinda Ki Jai Srimati Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Srimati Purnamasi Yoga Maya Devi Ki Jai Shri Gopi Swar Mahadev Ki Jai Sarva Bhishta Pradata Giriraj Govardhana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiu Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Purushottam Kshetra Dhama Ki Jai Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Shri Nrsinga Dev Ki Jai Bhakta Pravara Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Charo Dham Charo Sampradaya Charo Acharya Ki Jai Akara Matraj Shri Chaitanya Mat Ki Jai Aur Ananya Shakamat Samuha Ki Jai Shri Vishwa Vaishnav Raj Sabha Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Samkirtana Ki Jai Tribhuvana Mangala Harinama Prabhu Ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai Shri Nityananda Mahajana Ki Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Kartik Parikrama Kartik Braj Mandala Parikrama Ki Jai Parikrama Kori Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Namaste Narasingaya Hare Shipu Tanu Lingam Keshavadrita Hari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Nrsimhadev Jaya Nrsimhadev Nrsimhadev Jaya Nrsimhadev Lakshmi Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Bhakta Prabha Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha Lakshmi Nrsimha Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Jai Shri Nrsimha Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakta Prabhu Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Jai Shrimati Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Om Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Bhakti Prade Devi Sajjavachai Namo 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 Shri Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo Radha Krishna Nitya Seva Seva Vivasi Nitya Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki jai, Jai Jai Shri Radhe Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya
Today's the appearance day of Radhakund, right?
Yes.
It is?
Is it
On the
today?
calendar?
Today. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Wow, I didn't see that on my calendar.
Nobody knew.
Huh.
Easy for you to just, on the way home, just a little honey bowl.
It's true. I'll think of all of you.
All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Hari Hari Bo.